Brooklyn, New York. My father, Joe Yule, was born in Glasgow, Scotland. And my mother was Irish, and a lot of her ancestors came from Ireland. My mother and father didn't have a dollar. I was delivered on a boarding house table by a Chinese doctor who delivered me, slapped me on the rumpets, and I started to cry. He said, "Come on, kid, you've been resting for 9 months. It's time to get to work." Well, that was my cue. My mother and father, unfortunately, didn't see eye to eye. My mother took me to Kansas City, where her sister lived. 2221 Denver Avenue in Kansas City. And it was there that I went to see my first, what they called flick, a picture. It was a tent, and you could bring the children in and see it. And we saw people. It was only a dime or a nickel to get in to see it. And we sat on a bench. Got your game? And finally, I'd been talking. Well, you know, I've talked too much all my life, but I said, where are the people, Mom? And she says, they're in back. I said, I want to see them. She said, well, maybe you would someday. Anyway, she had an idea, and she brought me in an old rickety car that she had. And she drove from Kansas City. And she arrived in California. She didn't know what to do, so she had brought some of my clothes. I had a little tuxedo that they had made for me, and I sang the first song, was Pal, My Cradle Days, with a recitation. And I was 2.5 on the stage. And my father, Joe Yule, I had divorced my mother, and I was lonesome for a family. But I had my mother, and she didn't know what to do, so we took a train and then transferred to a bus and something, and went to this studio, which is now Warner Brothers. And I had a desire to do something, so I had a cane and one of my tailor-made suits. I still have those suits today, they fit me. Anyway, I went in and I read it, and Mr. Al Santel, the director, he was a silent picture. And he said, can you talk? I said, well, I think so. He said, how old are you? I said, 2.5, 3. He said, are you a midget? I said, well, whatever, I like to do what I'm doing. He says, I think you said. So I walked in and I played the scene for Colleen Moore. She was a telephone operator, and she looked over and she said, what are you doing down there? I said, gee, baby, you look great in an ermine coat. And she said, you fresh little thing. And that was it, and I walked out. And that was my first thing. I went and played in a picture with Tom Mix, the cowboy actor. It was called My Pal the King. Silent picture. Then somebody saw me and said, well, let's start doing Mickey McGuire comedies who were in the paper, and Fontaine Fox had written it. So Mickey McGuire, I did 89 of those pictures, and then they were silent, and then finally they were talkies, and I could hear myself talk. I said, oh, it was terrible. And afraid. And one day my mother gave me, I think, 10 cents for a sandwich or something, and a glass of milk. She was never a movie mother or anything like that. She kind of let me be on my own. I was walking out of this rickety studio called the Darrow Studios on Hollywood Boulevard. And that's where we made the Mickey McGuire comedies in 2 days, or 1 day. Didn't make any difference. And I was going to lunch. I think this story is quite interesting. It's the reason I'm telling you. I was going to lunch. I saw a shadow. And I poked my head and said, "Anybody here?" She says, "Yes, who's you? What's your name?" I said, "My name is Mickey McGuire." What's your name, sir?" He said, "My name is Walt Disney." So I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'd like to show you a picture of something." I said, "Thank you, Mr. Disney." He said, "Do you like this?" I said, "Gee, that's a terrific mouse. What do you call him, Mr. Disney?" He says, "Mortimer Mouse." Mortimer Mouse. I said, that's great. Thanks, Mr. Disney. And they're walking out. He said, "Thanks, Mickey." And he says, "Wait a minute. What is it, Mr. Disney?" He says, "I'm going to name this mouse Mickey Mouse."